So, peace, everybody. I have been doing a little bit of research after I saw 12 Years a Slave, and have seen that people have been putting their review of the film up, on their YouTubes and things like that. And really, I had planned to write a whole, you know, thing out regarding it and try to collect my ideas that way. And I still might, but video, of course, is an easy way to communicate and get ideas out. So this is kind of a brainstorm type of thing, and you get to watch me do it live in front of you. Like I said, I've been doing some research on what other people have said, just trying to see what people pulled apart from watching the film. And I have to say that I expected a little bit more from the critiques and the analysis than what I found. And so, again, I felt kind of compelled to write about it and to talk about it. First off, I just want to talk about the watching that film. After it was over, I bawled in the theater, and I really felt out of it. I was shaking. I felt angry. It's interesting because I'm in Houston, Texas, and the only places that are showing this film are pretty, bougie places where you only find a certain degree of people. Nicest way I can say it. So I had to go to a theater in a ritzy part of town to watch this slave narrative movie, and it was kind of hard to watch that and then walk out of the theater and see who I was surrounded with. I felt very in the moment with it. To me, it was a testament and reminder of resilience, and also why and how we find ourselves in the reality of today. But I'm a person who tries to look at the root of things. So what's the root cause? What causes people to break the law? What causes people to act out of what somebody would consider ideal citizenship in the United States? Why do we find ourselves in these predicaments? Why are laws set up in such a way that certain people get criminalized more than other people? And I think it has a lot to do with access. And so a movie like 12 Years a Slave, to me, it was important to see, because to me, it wasn't, watching a movie like that, I was like, that wasn't that long ago. We like to think about slavery as if it was, thousands and thousands of years ago, something that happened in, ancient times. We're totally disconnected from it. But in actuality, it's not that, it hasn't been that far along. These scars that we have as a people that were enslaved, is still very real. It's still very present. And I think people try to kind of whisk that away and say, no, we've progressed. We have, people now that, have indentured servitude people in their homes serving them, that are they're people of color. We've progressed. We can be lawyers, we can be doctors, we can be school teachers. We didn't have those things before. So, let's not talk about most of the population, and the fact that most of the population is not in that great a shape. If you go to any ghetto, any barrio, you find food deserts, you find transportation lacking, you find poverty or drugs and things like that. And so to me, it all connects to a history that we have that is hardly talked about but is very present, which is some people in this country were already had an advantage over others. So where they started from the bottom, where their bottom was different than the bottom of other people. And, so, just in that, that has to be taken into account, there's a difference between somebody who worked on a plantation in the South as a master, and even if they were, not the main, homeowner, plantation owner, they had a different livelihood. They had a different existence than the slaves did. And when emancipation happened, the playing field was extremely skewed, obviously, because you already had a people that had set up a society and a culture where they were viewed as being right, being white, being Caucasian, being Protestant, already put you at a certain advantage than if you were black or brown. I acknowledge and know my true ancestry to have started in Africa. That's the way that I connect it. But I'm very much have knowledge about, brown people, immigration, and that we also went through a slavery and a genocide and a Holocaust that is hardly ever discussed as well. If you do a Google search, you can find Mexicans that were lynched. You can find people along the border. And then even now, people that are migrants or so-called immigrants, and some people like to call us aliens, but these are people that have that are actually original inhabitants of the Americas that are simply moving around their continent, and yet we find murder, we find poverty, we find sex trafficking that is still very much alive and thriving for our people. So what happened in 12 Years a Slave is not so removed from what we deal with today. And just that mental slavery, that mental breakdown that this man had to go through. That's another thing that that I think it was interesting about the film was, one of the things that brought me to a place of pride, a place of feeling at peace, or feeling not having feelings of depression and anxiety like I did in my youth, was through Mexican American studies programs that eventually took me to indigenous rights studies, that took me into community organizing. And the further down that I went into discovering my roots, I discovered my true ancestry, and that I actually came from a people that were very scientifically and mathematically advanced. When I was in grade school, my only ideas of Native Americans or the Aztecs were a people that actually, I felt when I read, were actually pretty naive. To think that a white-skinned Hernan Cortez was a god on a horse, an animal they had never seen before, and then they just handed over this empire to them. Moctezuma just said this was a prophecy, they were going to come, and they just, hand whisked it over. And, as opposed to being on guard. And when I actually started to study my people, started to really study Moctezuma, Cortez, Cuauhtemoc, all of these people that were only, a little paragraph or two in my history books, I found out that there was actually rebellions. There was actually, fight back. There was people that resisted these Spanish conquests and takeover. And it caused me to look at myself differently, because being a brown woman in the in the Americas let me know that these people were my ancestors, are my ancestors. And what does that mean to me today? So there had to have been a mental enslavement that came along with the physical enslavement of my people. And when I was watching 12 Years a Slave, I saw this thing play out in front of me, because here was a man who was free, had privilege over other blacks even in the North, had a skill, and then he had to be mentally broken and put in a state of constant fear in order to end up and survive in the situation that he was in. And it just made me think on, what my people went through as well, to be such highly advanced, to have developed advanced calendars, and to live so close to the land, and then to be completely stripped of their rights and enslaved or converted to Christianity. And if you didn't do it, you were going to get killed. You were going to get hung. You were going to have your limbs cut off. Your life was very expendable. And what did that mean? And where did that put us now as a gente? So when we don't know that our ancestors were actually more advanced than the Spaniards that came, than the Europeans that came, then it's easier to buy into the logic that this is the way the world is, and this is the way it's always has been, and that we actually are lucky to have had these white saviors come in and help us, because we were savages, right? We were running around like Pocahontas all day with wind and just talking to trees and things like that, and not really knowing what was out in the world, when actually we were more highly advanced and sanitary, and so many other things that Europeans were not. So there was a mental enslavement, there was a mental breakdown that happened to our people in order for us to buy what went on then and what goes on now. Worked and strived to get to know women and understand, as a woman, understand other women, and the rape culture and these ideas of women's bodies and things like that. So the character Patsy was powerful beyond measure. Being brought right into her, and even her features that she had were, me with the eyes that I have now, I recognize a queen, somebody who if she was still in her original land would have been considered, beautiful, would have been considered righteous, would have been respected and held to a certain, nature and lifestyle. And it was so heart-wrenching to see that she did have certain privilege over other slaves, where she was on that plantation, yet where that energy was coming from was this captor. And the desperation of her character, the her trying to mentally again tell herself that this is okay, I could be like this woman a plantation away eventually and gain some kind of status, but at the same time being in a state of torture and wanting out. And that connection, those are some of the things that it made me think on. And I think it's a really important film for every person to see, especially people of color. And since, the ultimate battle is white privilege, I also think it's important for white folk to go and watch this film, because as much as I saw myself in so many of those characters, um, in so many of those slave characters, I think it's important for them to see their ancestors as well, and come to terms and understand that, yes, in fact, your parent may not have owned a plantation, but your ancestor, maybe not owned a plantation, but your ancestor most definitely had advantage and allowed this thing to go on, especially in the South, that you're a descendant of these people. You're a descendant of people that will go to a picnic and watch somebody get lynched and take pictures and smile. That you were so desensitized to seeing a brown person or a black person as a human, that was okay with you, and that was okay with your children being around those things as well. And when slavery ended, or when people gained rights, or when the civil rights movement happened, that your ideas did change, you did progress in your thinking and unthinking of brown people in a certain way, but yet the privilege that you hold and continue to hold is a direct effect of what was going on in this country at that time. So I think it's important for white people to see. I think it's important for everybody to see, and for us to have these conversations. Again, resilience, because even though we went through these things as black and brown people, we're still here. We are still exploring our own histories, and we resist to this day the status quo that was set up in some sort of way, whether it's, anything that you could think of, coupon clipping, and really, really learning that system, things of that nature, where we find ways to try to level that playing field for ourselves, and to try to resist and exist in a good way, are still very real, and a direct link to what we went through and had to strive through and survive through. And for white people to look at and accept their privilege, to look their privilege in the face and understand it, so that we can start to really decipher where all these other problems that we have in our society really stem from. Who you are, and you truly delve into all of those things, and you can start to understand your place so much better. You can start to carry yourself in a certain kind of way. And I think, I go all over the place with it, but I think, Michael Jackson, may he rest in peace, was a prophet in so many ways through so much of his music, but Man in the Mirror being one of the greatest songs that was ever written, where he says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. When you start to change yourself, when you start to see who you really are, where you really, where you originate from, you carry yourself in a certain kind of way. I can testify to that. I can testify to being a person, a young woman who struggled with understanding what this existence was, how I fit into it, why I felt feelings of depression and anxiety, loneliness, disparity. And once I started to learn what had really happened to my people, and then prior to that, all the things that came from Africa, that came from Tenochtitlan, came from the Mayans, and seen that I actually am the descendant of a very supreme people, very knowledgeable people. It made me thirsty for life. It made me thirsty to hold myself to a certain standard and to have a certain understanding about existence, even. And I think that once somebody has that, they move in that kind of way. And I'm also a firm believer that that can change the whole scope. Imagine our young people really knowing who they are, and you want to take those emotions, because when I walked out of 12 Years a Slave, I was standing in line for the bathroom, trying to get myself kind of in a straight before I had to walk out of the theater, and this elderly white woman came by me, and she was gonna just walk into the bathroom. Well, there was a line. She was just gonna walk into the bathroom, and then she kind of stepped back and said, "Oh, is this the line?" And I felt enraged. I felt like, yes, this is the line. Sometimes you gotta get in line. You know what I mean? And but I had to catch myself, and I had to say, you know, use that energy, use what you just saw, and turn it into something positive. Some people never escaped that that state. They died in shackles. They lived their entire lives and dropped dead, on these plantations, and didn't get to know another life, and were disconnected from themselves and their families. But we still persist. We still strive for people to see the godliness in us. And so like I said, there's just some of the things that this movie brought up for me. Hopefully I wasn't too all over the place, because I know that at times I can get into a stream of thought and go and move around. But that's just some of the things that have been going on in my brain since seeing that movie. If you look at other critiques, you'll notice that everybody says they will never be the same after watching this film. I went to see it twice. Some people said they could barely sit through it one time, but even being able to sit through it one time was a feat that they overcame. So, if you haven't seen the film, go see the film. Support, this narrative, and critique it and be honest. And look at all the angles, because it didn't touch on everything, and it didn't fully bring out everything that had to do with slavery, but it's a step in that direction, I think, or to at least open up these broader conversations about why is it important today, what does it mean, and just kind of to add on to that, when last year or the year prior, you can have a so-called Hispanic man in Florida see a young black male walking through his community, and instantly assume that this person is a threat to him, that is somebody who is up to no good, even though he had no evidence whatsoever of that, and decided to get out of his vehicle, approach him, get into a tussle, and then kill a child who had no weapon, and then proceed to go through the court system that was also developed to protect privilege, and could work the system and be forgiven, pardoned, and get off scotch-free for killing a young person, killing a young black male, and the reality of what black life means in this country still to this day. And, people don't like to pull the race card on these things, but that's what this country was built upon to a high degree. Don't be in denial about that. And so Zimmerman, as a Hispanic, had a very Eurocentric and has a very Eurocentric mindset. He doesn't see himself as a Mexicano. I doubt he relates to a day laborer that is looking for work on near Home Depot. And that he more sees himself agreeing with the laws and things of the Florida governor and things like that. It's related to Bush and all these people that have always had these places of privilege, and wanting to grasp that for whatever those reasons are. A whole other video and article. For him to be so disconnected to this young person, to feel compelled that even though he had no way to really harm that Trayvon Martin had no real way to harm him, he decided that he was expendable enough that he would take the chance that if he shot this person and killed this child, that he wouldn't have to rot in jail for the rest of his life. That is a mental a thing. That's something that he has been taught. That's something that he has believed will work for him. And I think a lot of people walk around that way. And again, it stems back from people in the times of slavery getting no problem. Kill that slave. You bought him. He was $500. You can do without that $500. Whatever. He made you mad. He didn't come in time. Shoot him. Shoot him in the back. Don't have to even really think twice about it, because you could explain to your fellow privileged people about why you felt like you were in danger. And so yeah, I mean, this film is phenomenal. The acting is phenomenal. What it brings forward is phenomenal. And as a human being, as a brown woman, as somebody who really loves her community and who is heartbroken every time that she sees young black bodies being treated as though they are unimportant, unintelligent, or expendable, brown and black bodies. This is an important film to talk about, to go over, and to really go within and ask a whole lot of questions and connect it. And so, man, that's just some of the stuff that's on the top, because it goes deeper. All kinds of things, all kinds of ways. So I'm interested to know what other people pulled apart, more critiques. I'm very forgiving when it comes to the Hollywood industry, and being like, well, the movie was already 2 hours more long, you want to fit all kinds of other ideas and storylines in, but we want to, of course, hold people accountable as well. So, other critiques and other ideas about, what was missed, what wasn't, and what are the positive things. Always working from the positive things that we can take out of seeing a movie like this. So, that's really where I'm at with that. I'm still deciphering through a lot. And I wanted to discuss it. So yes, I think there might have been a little bit of spoilers. I didn't go into it too much, but the title alone tells you dude was a slave for 12 years. Obviously you knew going in that there would be some end to this, some kind of end to it. And so I want to end on that, and invite other people to, talk about it. Leave it in the comments or send me a message or things like that. Ultimately, I think it would be really cool and important if people took it upon themselves to have talk circles around this, or to, you know, bridge whole panels around this, you know, and discussing what it meant to them. You know, I'm sure anybody who has seen it, it stayed with you. You have little flashes, these images. You know, some of the people I've talked to so far about it. So, you know, that we continue to have these conversations and be real about it. You know, everybody for listening. I know I go on and I can. So, peace.